It started with a laugh. Not mine. Hers. A specific kind of laugh, the one I hadn't heard in months. Light, effortless, like someone opened a window in a dusty room. I heard it while she was on the phone in the kitchen. When I walked in, she turned her back just slightly, like she didn't want me to hear the rest. Just a work call, she said after she hung up, but it didn't feel like work. Over the next few weeks, I began noticing the gaps. Not holes. No, gaps. Tiny ones, like spaces between floorboards that weren't there before. She stayed late more often, even when I knew her deadlines were done. She started wearing perfume again, not much, but enough to notice. Enough to remind me of the early years when she'd dab it on before we went out just so I'd lean in closer. The thing is, we were okay. Not perfect, but okay. 15 years in, we knew each other's rhythms. We had inside jokes, shared playlists, a kid who still needed help with homework, and a dog who barked at every mailman. There was love. Or maybe I believed there still was. Then one Sunday morning, while she was in the shower, her phone lit up on the nightstand. I didn't mean to look. Truly. I wasn't that kind of husband. But the name that flashed, Evan, stopped me. I didn't recognize it. And the message beneath was simple. I missed last night already. I sat down on the edge of the bed. The dog looked up at me, tail thumping once. I didn't move. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, staring at the text, my heart thudding so loud I barely heard the water running. When she came back into the room, wrapped in a towel, she smiled at me like nothing had changed. Maybe, to her, nothing had. Or maybe everything had, and she was just better at hiding it. I didn't ask her about the message that day, or the next. Instead, I watched. I listened. I memorized the way she answered when I asked how her day was. I started writing down her excuses in a notebook, quietly keeping track: late meetings, impromptu drinks, girls' nights that left no trace. I wasn't trying to trap her. I was trying to prepare myself for what I already knew. But knowing and accepting are two very different things. It was a Thursday. Cold, gray, the kind of day that feels like it never fully wakes up. I was supposed to be at work, had even told her I'd be home late because of a project review. That part was true, at least until it got canceled at the last minute. Everyone else was thrilled to leave early. I didn't go home right away. I stopped for coffee, wandered through a used bookshop, sat in the car for 10 minutes just watching the rain crawl down the windshield. Maybe part of me knew. Maybe part of me didn't want to walk into a quiet house and feel how far she'd drifted. When I pulled into our driveway, there was a car I didn't recognize parked a little up the street. A silver sedan. Not flashy, just ordinary. Except it had Illinois plates. We lived in Ohio, and we didn't have guests. At first, I tried to talk myself down. Could be a neighbor, a delivery guy, someone turning around. But as I stepped out of the car, I saw something else. The curtain in our bedroom, second floor, far right, shifted. Just a flicker, like someone watching and stepping back. My heart started pounding. I walked inside. It was quiet. Too quiet. I took off my shoes, listened. There was the faint sound of music upstairs. Her playlist, the one she always used when she cleaned. But I knew better. I knew how her cleaning music sounded when she was really cleaning. Loud, open, careless. This was cautious. Covered. I climbed the stairs slowly. Every creak in the wood felt louder than it should have. My hand hesitated on the bedroom door. It was mostly closed, just a crack of light showing. I don't know what I expected. Honestly, I don't even know if I expected anything anymore. But I opened the door, and there they were. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, fully dressed, but her posture, her hands folded in her lap, her face pale, told me everything. And next to her stood a man I didn't know who looked just as startled as I was. He wasn't touching her, not anymore. But there was guilt in the space between them, like it lingered in the air. I didn't say anything at first. I think my mind just paused, like a tape reel stopping mid-spin. She stood up, opened her mouth, but no words came. The man said awkwardly, "I should go." And he did. Slipped past me like a ghost down the stairs and out the front door. I never even got his name. She looked at me. Her eyes were red already. Maybe she'd been crying, maybe not. "I didn't expect you home," she whispered. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Yeah," I said. "Neither did I." We stood there in the bedroom, the silence between us thicker than any screaming could have been. She looked smaller than I remembered. Maybe it was just the guilt. Or maybe it was me, seeing her clearly for the first time in months. I didn't expect you home, she repeated, as if saying it again might make it less true. I closed the door behind me, not slamming it, just closing it. Like I needed a boundary, a frame around whatever the hell this was. How long? I asked. My voice surprised me. It wasn't angry, just tired. She didn't look up. 3 months, she said, almost inaudibly, but it didn't mean, don't, I cut in. Don't do that. Don't try to soften it. She swallowed hard. I wasn't going to say it didn't mean anything. I was going to say it didn't start the way you probably think. I didn't go looking for it. I let out a short breath. Not a laugh, just a release of pressure. You think that makes a difference? No, she said quietly. No, I guess not. I sat on the edge of the dresser, facing her. I didn't trust myself to be closer. You know, I said, I've been wondering for a while. The late nights. The way you stopped asking me how my day was, how you started sleeping with your back to me. She winced. That part got her. I told myself we were just busy, just tired, that every marriage had phases like that. I was tired, she whispered. Tired of pretending we were okay, tired of feeling invisible. I nodded slowly. And instead of telling me that, you told him? She looked up then, eyes glassy, but no tears yet. He listened. Of course he did, I said, bitter now. He didn't have 10 years of real life with you. He didn't watch your dad die or hold your hand through your surgery. He didn't see you cry over that job you lost or clean up after you when you got the flu. All he had to do was show up and smile. Her lip trembled. I'm sorry. I looked at her. Really looked. Are you sorry you cheated? I asked. Or sorry you got caught? She finally cried then, not loudly, just tears sliding down her cheeks, quiet and slow. I don't know, she admitted. Maybe both. I stood. I couldn't sit still anymore. The room felt too tight, the air too sharp. I loved you. I said, I really did. Even when we were falling apart, I still hoped we'd figure it out. She wiped her face. Do you still love me? I hesitated. That was the worst part. I didn't know the answer. She asked me if I still loved her, and I stood there in the middle of our bedroom, the room where we laughed, argued, made plans, made love, and realized I didn't have a simple answer. I don't know, I said, honestly. Right now, all I feel is exhausted. She nodded like she expected that, maybe even deserved it. But the look in her eyes, that flicker of hope, was still there, just barely alive. I grabbed my jacket off the chair. I'm going to take a drive, I said. I need to think. I need space. Are you leaving for good? She asked, barely above a whisper. I paused at the door. If I was, I think I'd already know. She didn't stop me. She didn't cry louder or beg or run after me. That somehow hurt more than if she had. I drove with no real direction, just miles and music and memories. I thought about our life, not just the betrayal, but everything before, the good stuff. The quiet Tuesday nights, the inside jokes, the time we fixed the sink together and flooded the kitchen and laughed so hard we forgot why we were mad. Could I forgive her? Maybe. Could I trust her again? That was the real question. Because love without trust is like a boat with holes. You can pretend you're still floating, but you'll drown eventually. I parked outside a diner we used to go to years ago, back when we were still trying. I didn't go in, just sat there watching the neon flicker in the reflection of the windshield. That's when I realized I didn't have to decide everything tonight. I didn't have to choose between staying or leaving forever. I just had to choose what I needed right now. That night I stayed at a cheap motel, not out of anger, just to breathe, to not be in that house full of ghosts and questions. The next morning I texted her, I'm not gone, but I'm not coming home yet either. I need time. I hope you'll respect that. She replied simply, I will, and I'll wait, however long it takes. And that was how it began. Not an ending, but something else, something uncertain, a middle. It's been 5 days. I've been staying in the same motel, the kind with humming fluorescent lights and towels thin as paper. It's not comfortable, but comfort isn't what I need. I need clarity and quiet. Every morning I wake up before the sun. I make bad coffee, sit at the little table by the window, and try to write down what I'm feeling. I don't write well, but that's not the point. I write because something about seeing the words makes them feel less like they're clawing at my ribs. She broke something. But did she break us or just my idea of what we were? I've written that line 3 times, still don't know the answer. On the third night, I called my brother. Told him everything. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "You always wanted things to mean something, not just work, not just people. You look for depth. Maybe she forgot that, or maybe she never had it to give." It hit hard because I did look for meaning, maybe too much. Then he added, "But don't make your decision out of pride. That's the easiest mistake. You've got every right to be angry. Just don't let the anger drive the car." He was right. Pride was seductive. It whispered, "She doesn't deserve you. Walk away and don't look back." But another voice, smaller and quieter, whispered, "You still love her, or at least some part of you does." On the sixth day, she called. First time since I left. "I know you said you needed space," she said, "and I'm not trying to take that away. I wanted to say I've started therapy. Alone. Not because I expect you to come back, because I need to understand what I did. Why I did it." That surprised me. She didn't sound like she was performing or making excuses. She sounded tired. The kind of tired that comes from looking too long in the mirror. I didn't say much, just, "Okay, thanks for telling me." But after we hung up, I sat there for a long time, staring at the cheap floral bedspread, listening to the distant hum of a vending machine outside my window. And I thought about whether people really can change. Not just say it, but do it. And if they do, whether I could, too. I haven't gone home, but I've started packing up the motel room. Slowly. Not because I've made a decision, just because I think it's time to go somewhere new. Even if that somewhere is just a conversation we haven't had yet. He didn't tell her he was coming. The house looked smaller than he remembered. Maybe because in the past week it had become something more myth than structure. The place where everything changed, where memory and betrayal lived side by side. He parked a little down the street, just sat for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, breathing. Then he got out. The porch light was on, though the sun hadn't set yet. She always turned it on too early, saying it made the house feel welcoming. That used to annoy him. Now it felt like an invitation. He opened the door with his own key. She was in the kitchen, slicing an apple. Her back was to him, but she froze, like she felt him in the room before she heard him. She turned slowly. No words yet. Then she said softly, "Hi, hi." The silence that followed wasn't cold, just cautious, like walking barefoot across glass. "I wasn't sure you'd ever come back," she said. "Neither was I," he replied. He stepped in farther, leaning against the doorframe of the kitchen, the smell of cinnamon, the cluttered warmth of the home they built, one dish towel at a time. It all felt familiar and foreign at once. "I'm not here to forgive you," he said, "not cruelly, just honestly. And I'm not here to punish you either." She nodded. "I don't expect anything. I just want to hear you, whatever you need to say." He looked at her, really looked. The tired eyes, the way she held her breath, waiting for him to crack open or shut down. "I don't know what we are now," he said, but I know I'm not ready to throw away years like they meant nothing, and I'm not ready to come back like nothing happened." She nodded again. "I get that. Good. Because I think maybe I want to try to understand, not fix, not forget, just understand what happened to us, to you, to me." Tears welled up in her eyes, but she blinked them back. "I want that too." He stepped closer, not touching her, not yet, just being near enough to feel that she was real. "We'll need help," he said. "I've already started," she whispered, "but I'll go wherever you need me to go." He nodded, and in that kitchen they stood again, not as husband and wife, not yet, but as two people bruised and unsure, standing on the fragile edge of what might become something new. The house had finally gone still. The kids were asleep. At least they hoped so. He'd checked their rooms twice, just in case. Not for safety, really, more for an excuse to delay this moment. She was curled on the couch, legs tucked under her, the soft blue blanket she always used draped across her lap. He brought 2 mugs of tea. Hers, mint. His, black. They hadn't talked much all evening, polite exchanges over dinner, the routine of bedtime, but now the air felt heavy with everything they hadn't said. He sat down, not close, but not far, enough to feel her warmth through the silence. She was the first to speak. "I hate that you don't look at me the same." He didn't answer right away, just held his mug. Then finally, "I don't know how to look at you right now. I'm still figuring that out." She nodded, bit her lip. "Fair." Silence again. Then, "I keep wondering," he said, "when exactly we stopped talking. Not the surface stuff. Milk, Bills, who's driving who? I mean, talking, she sighed. I think I stopped when I started feeling like whatever I said would add to your exhaustion, like I was handing you more weight when you were already sinking. And I thought I was protecting you by keeping everything I felt bottled up, he admitted. Like if I showed you how tired I was, you'd think I was weak, or worse, that I didn't care. They both laughed softly, not because it was funny, but because it was so tragically ordinary. Two people trying so hard not to hurt each other that they built a wall no one could climb. I miss us, she whispered. Not just what we had. I mean, the way you used to look at me when I came into a room, like I was yours. His throat tightened. You were. You still are. She looked down. Then why did I feel so invisible? He didn't flinch. That part hurt, but he'd been preparing himself to hear worse. I think because I started to believe you didn't want to be seen, that I was just in your way. A tear slid down her cheek. She didn't wipe it. Would you have forgiven me, she asked, if I'd told you before it happened? If I'd come to you and said I was feeling empty, disconnected, would you have listened? Yes, he said too quickly. Then, at least I want to believe I would have. She gave him a long, searching look. And now? Do you think we have a chance? He didn't answer have a choice, he finally said. And that's the only thing that ever really matters. She reached out slowly, brushing her fingers against his. Not grasping, just offering. And for the first time in months, he didn't pull away. Session 3. The rain ticked lightly against the windows. The therapist, Dana, sat with a legal pad she rarely wrote on, her gaze calm but probing. They sat apart again, not touching, but not rigid. It was the first time either had really looked forward to the session, not because it would be easy, but because it meant something was moving. Dana cleared her throat gently. I want to go back to the moment you found out. Mike, what did that moment do to your idea of who you were in the marriage? He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I think I stopped recognizing myself. I always thought I was the guy who'd know, who'd catch signs, right, who'd say something before it got that far. And suddenly I was the guy who missed it all. I felt stupid, like a fool sitting in a house that was already half burned down. Dana nodded. She looked at her. Anna, how does it feel to hear that? She didn't look at him, just stared at the corner of the coffee table. Awful, because I never wanted to destroy him. I just wanted someone to see me, and I thought for a while that I could have both, be his wife, and still feel visible. Do you still feel invisible with him now? She hesitated. Less, but I still don't know who I am to him anymore. I don't know if he's staying because he loves me or because he can't imagine starting over. Mike looked over at her, a mix of exhaustion and something deeper, something like tenderness fighting its way through the rubble. I'm here because I need to know if we can be real again. Not perfect, not healed, just real. Dana let the silence hang, heavy and instructive. So let's ask the hard question, she said, her voice almost a whisper. Do you both want to rebuild, or are you hoping therapy will give you permission to walk away without guilt? They sat still, very still. Anna blinked, swallowed. Some days I want to fight, some days I want to disappear, and some days I just want him to hold me like he used to, like nothing's broken. Mike's jaw clenched. I don't know how to hold someone who broke me, but I also don't know how to let go without feeling like I'm leaving a part of myself behind. Dana set her pen down. Then that's where we start next week. Not with forgiveness. Not yet. We start with grief, because the version of your marriage that existed before, it's gone. And if you're going to move forward, together or apart, you'll need to mourn it first. They went to therapy because they thought it was the responsible thing to do, a signal to the kids, to themselves, to the world. We're trying. Every Thursday night at 7, they sat on a couch that wasn't theirs, facing a woman with a clipboard and kind, tired eyes. The first few sessions were quiet, careful. Then came the honesty. And with it, the unraveling. He told her how the betrayal felt like acid in his bones, how he couldn't stop picturing it, even during the mundane moments. Folding laundry, driving to work, making toast. Her silence in response didn't soothe him. It made him feel like he was talking into a well. She said she'd felt invisible for years, that he'd shut her out long before anyone else came in. She said it softly, but it landed like a slap. He wanted to argue. He did argue. about how he provided, how he stayed, how he sacrificed. In one session, she said she didn't know if she was still in love with him. The therapist asked if he wanted to respond. He did, loudly, harshly, regretfully. The words spilled out and couldn't be taken back. Soon, therapy became another battlefield, a sterile room where they sharpened old wounds into new ones. She cried. He clenched his fists. The therapist gave them worksheets. They never filled them out. On the drive home, they often sat in silence. Or worse, fought in whispered venom, careful not to wake the kids when they pulled into the driveway. It wasn't healing. It was excavation, digging up years of resentment, unmet needs, guilt, and shame. But instead of building something from the ruins, they just kept standing in them, pointing fingers, both too tired to lift the stones. And slowly, they both began to wonder, what if trying wasn't the same as saving? The last therapy session ended like most of the others, cold silence and the hollow echo of things said too late. They sat in the car afterward, the engine off, rain tapping gently on the windshield. Neither of them reached for the other. Neither had anything left to say. That night, after the kids were asleep, he stood in the kitchen and said it quietly. I think we're done. She didn't argue, just looked at him for a long time and tired and sad and nodded. They told the kids a week later, gently, carefully, like the therapist advised. There were tears, but also relief. Kids feel everything. He moved out first into a small rental with creaky floors and mismatched furniture. It wasn't much, but it was honest. There was space to breathe, and in that silence, something surprising happened. He began to remember who he was before everything cracked. She kept the house, the dog. They shared custody and made it work. Not perfectly, but humanly. Some endings come like storms. This one came like a long winter finally giving up its grip. Not easy, not clean, but necessary. And sometimes survival is its own kind of love story.